Support for the CivicSciTV network comes from listeners and viewers like you, and organizations such as the Sci Resident Collective, a community of emerging civic science scholars and entrepreneurs. Visit saicollective.org to learn more.
Exploring societal challenges through the lens of civic science. This is the Civic Science Perspective program with host Diya Dwarakanath. In this segment, Diya talks with Professors Gina Lorenz, Paul Kwiat, and Smitha Vishweshwara, who are faculty members in the Grainger College of Engineering at the University of Illinois Urbana, Champaign. Dr. Lorenz's research currently focuses on a variety of areas in quantum optics, including quantum networks. She is an atomic, molecular, and optical physics professor. Dr. Kwiat's research uses photons to investigate a range of topics from foundations of quantum mechanics to quantum cryptography, communication, and computation. Dr. Vishweshwara's research spans a broad range of topics in quantum condensed matter theory and interfaces with other sub-disciplines, such as biological physics and gravitation. Learn more about their work by clicking on the links below.
Hi, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Diya Dwarakanath. Today, we're going to talk about quantum science and technology through the lens of civic science. We have the pleasure of being joined by Gina Lorenz and her colleagues, Paul Kwiat and Smitha Vishweshwara from the University of Illinois, Urbana, Champaign. Thank you all for coming and welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you. Nice to see you.
Awesome. So let's start with some definitions here, so both our audience and I can get up to speed. The Brookings Institution paper written by Joseph Keller that I shared with you all mentions that modern quantum computing uses superposition and entanglement as opposed to the basic quantum properties that are used in functional MRIs. What does all that really mean, Paul? Can you give us some working definitions for us?
Yeah. So superposition is something that actually even exists classically, where you can add up two, like sound waves can come at you from a couple different locations and you can add them together, or water waves. So it turns out that quantum particles also can have superpositions, and why that can be very helpful. For example, if you had an atom, you could think about the atom, if it's in one state, being a 0, if it's in another state being a 1, and the fact that it can be in both of those states at once will give you a lot of computational advantage. Let's just say that. So maybe just as an example, if you have a laptop and you wanted to make it twice as powerful, you could just get 2 laptops. Okay, easy enough. If you have a quantum computer that's based on these superpositions of quantum states, and let's say you had 1,000 of these things, which we would call quantum bits, and you wanted to make that twice as powerful, you don't make it 2,000, you just make it 1,001, and then it's twice as powerful. And 1,002 is 4 times as powerful. 1,003, it's 8 times as powerful. So you get this exponential speed up. And if you have one particle, we would say it's in a superposition of being in these different states. And if you have then a whole bunch of them, a family of particles, that's what we would call this term entanglement, where these connections between these particles.
Okay, wow, that's good to know, and that helps a lot. Like, what, for us to really have a fruitful conversation today, what do you think we need to understand about quantum mechanics? And I know there's a lot of terms in there: quantum science, tech, computing, etc.
I think mostly just the fact that you get more possibilities in the quantum case, and also that these quantum states can be pretty fragile. And so if they interact with the environment, they don't necessarily want to stay in a quantum state. Kind of the image I often use is of a coin. So you can think of a coin, lying flat where its heads, or flat where its tails, but you could also imagine spinning it where its heads and tails at the same time. You can kind of loosely think of that as a superposition of the two. And the thing that happens is that if you just spin it on the table, it doesn't keep spinning, right? It eventually spins down and it collapses to one or the other. Quantum states kind of do the same thing. They don't like to be in superpositions, which is why it's not that easy to make these or to use them. I don't know. Okay. That's probably enough. What do you two think?
I think that's a good starting point. We'll define as we go.
Sounds good. I like that. No, that's the spinning coin is a really useful metaphor, I think, to think about that. And I can imagine that it's very complicated to get manage these things to do what you want them to do. And as you know, as an engineer myself, I would love to ask you all the questions about quantum, but today we're going to focus on the civic science aspect of it. So we'll dive right into what you three have all been doing in that area, which is amazing. So Gina, let's start with you. Tell me about how the Public Quantum Network came about. It had its debut in November 2023, so that congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so well, the idea for the Public Quantum Network actually arose for similar reasons that the Brookings paper covered. So in particular, access to quantum technology. So I was concerned about how quantum technology based on these concepts of superposition and entanglement aren't currently accessible to the kind of general public. And you have to be basically a fourth-year undergraduate studying physics before you start to learn about these concepts. And so I was inspired by, this idea that it would be great to bring quantum technology to the public, to educators at the K through 12 level to teach kids about these ideas. Because first of all, they're fascinating ideas that underlie our universe and the way it works. Second of all, there's this coming quantum technology that's based on these amazing concepts. And third of all, just like the cell phone was developed with more and more applications, thanks to being accessible to a wider range of people. If we make quantum technology accessible to a wide range of people, the possible applications that might arise are beyond our imagination. And I'm excited to see how, through interacting with quantum technology, we can get new ideas coming in from the public and from a more diverse pool of people.
That's awesome. I think that's exactly the kind of work that we love to see here, and to really talk about is kind of marrying that science and society. There's so many applications that can come up. So like, what were some of the key questions the network was asking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so first of all, how do you do that? How do you bring these concepts in a way that they understand, that links to what they already know, gives them some kind of intuition as much as possible? And that's a real challenge. So that's one question we're constantly trying to answer. Another is, how do you do this with technology that's still under research? This is cutting edge technology. This is not something that people do everywhere. There are only a few quantum networks in the world. And so it's exciting to be doing both the cutting edge research alongside the public interaction, because then they start to feed each other. That's the goal, at least, to have a feedback loop forming. And so creating that and making it smooth and making it result in something new, that's a big question we're trying to answer too.
That's awesome. So on that note, then, what are some of the lessons you've learned from interacting with like the local library? I understand it was the Urbana Free Library. Mm-hmm. What did you learn from working with them and from the public? What kind of fed into your feedback loop for actual research?
Yeah, and I'd say the lessons we've learned are very similar to the lessons that Paul and Smitha have learned through their amazing LabEscape that Paul's created, and the Arts and Science Collective that Smitha has created. And that is that the public is ready. The public is excited and enthusiastic about learning about these ideas, about participating in different aspects of it. And that's what we found with the Public Quantum Network. They were standing room only at the launch event. People continue to send in measurement requests using the permanent installation at the library that we installed. And so I think that's one big lesson, is that people are ready. They want to know more. And I think having the opportunity to learn and to contribute, that's what I think they're very excited to have. So.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So speaking of that, Paul, can you speak a little bit about the work you're doing with LabEscape, and if you had any challenges in trying to set that up?
Sure. So So I started this quite a few years ago. Back in 2017, I had done an escape room, which is this recreational activity. I don't know if you've ever done one, but you get together with a group of friends or family, and you have to solve a bunch of puzzles to complete some mission. And I had the notion that we could do one, a quite interesting one with a science-based storyline, but also I'd be able to use a lot of the demos that I really like to use when I lecture and kind of expose people to that and show people that science can be relevant and accessible to them. So you can understand things like how a 3D movie, there we go, how 3D movies work, and without needing any kind of math or something like that. And also that science can be aesthetically beautiful, some of the things, and also that it can be fun. And to give people a sense of what it's like to be a scientist, I think people often think that scientists go off on their own and struggle to solve problems. And really, it's very, very social. We're always working with each other and trying to help each other. And I think that was part of the goal. And I've been very pleased with how successful we've been, in the sense that there's been great interest. We've now had over 13,000 people go through, and pretty much, I don't know, 98% 5-star ratings, which is not to say that we're fabulous, although I think we do an okay job, but it's to show that people really are interested. You can get people, science can be very popular if it's presented correctly, in a way where we can expose people to these quantum concepts in a way which is non-threatening and in the context of a very fun storyline, and they can then hopefully carry some of that out with them, and hopefully that will generate some interest. And in fact, it has generated interest. I get emails all the time from people who have gone through and say, oh, I want to learn more about this. Where should I look?
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So can you share with us one of the games or puzzles in this quantum escape room?
Oh, sure. So there's one puzzle where there is a mosaic of bottle caps, different colored bottle caps. And if you look at them, some are red and some are green. And if you look at it, the green ones spell out the letter F. And if you instead, and they're told that the code that they need is somehow to deal with visible photons and low energy photons and high energy photons. And they also have an infrared camera, which infrared photons are low energy photons. And if you look at the exact same mosaic in the infrared, you see the letter U instead of the letter F. And if you instead look at it with an ultraviolet light, which is high energy photons, then you get the letter N. So depending on the perspective that you have, depending on how you're making the measurement, you get totally different answers. And that's certainly a very quantum mechanical kind of thing. And also it's fun, literally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm thinking of our audience, some of whom might be science communicators or engagers watching our interview here and wondering, okay, this seems like a very complicated area. How do I even approach it? So I think seeing an example of ways you've been able to incorporate these complex concepts into something that is really everyday and something that we can all understand is really cool. And Smitha, let's come to you now. I am so intrigued by your collective because I'm a classical dancer and a biomedical engineer. So just tell us, I would love to hear more. So let's start with that. And then I have a specific question I want to get to.
Perfect. So first off, let me also add, as someone that's participated in each of, Paul and Gina's beautiful collaborative creations, it's really exciting. With Paul, we did my family, we did an intergenerational thing with my mother and, my nieces and son. And
they were awesome.
Yeah, well, it was so exciting. And, the way Paul led us to, and you, as a person who's playing a game and who knows so little about how to escape from escape rooms, and at the same time seeing the physics that you know deeply in action being portrayed in such clever ways, it was amazing. And then with Gina, this is quantum entanglement, Einstein's spooky action at a distance. Quantum physics is mind-blowing and very approachable in an intuitive way, and of course very deep in other ways. And so to see that Gina's lab was actually putting out these entangled bits of light that you could fathom in the library was just amazing. So I should say it's a sort of beautiful complementary parts that we're all bringing together. With me, CASCaDe stands for Collective for Art and Science, Creativity and Discovery, etc. and it's my co-founders are Latrell Bright from theater and Steve Taylor from music, and we're all based in Urbana, Champaign. But really, it's a bringing together of the work that we've been doing with a community of over 100 people over the past, I'd say, 5 or 6 years. Faculty, students, community members, just people from different walks of life, where it is CASCaDe, it is what it says. And right now, we're heavily steeped in one theater piece called Quantum Voyages, which Latrell and I first scripted about 5 or 6 years ago now. And it really is an adventure tale of 2 voyagers going into the quantum realm, guided by Sapienza, the spirit of wisdom. And, I think at that point, my son was in the Nutcracker. And this whole thing of, going through different worlds guided by some kind of spirit. And there it was snowflakes and, creatures from different realms. And so Latrell and I, we thought, why not the same thing, this journey, but now it's the land of photons, or it's a raging sea of electrons that you actually have inside metals. And so they go through different realms discovering, and in moments of strife, they call upon what we call quantum sages. And these are real life physicists that come onto stage, they share their wisdom, and they save the day. And Gina has been our opening sage in the land of photons. And, she actually wrote a verse in iambic pentameter that, yes, you see, that creativity and imagination is really just, that's the thing that scientists and artists share a lot. Absolutely. And so you see her beautiful description of light being a particle and a wave, and those seeds of entanglement buried in the meaning, for example, that Gina conveys. Then there's this other land of superconductivity, for example, where these raging sea of electrons, that's related to my research. I'm a quantum condensed matter physicist. I talk about how when different quantum entities come together, what beautiful things do they manifest. We have a quantum ensemble in the play that also depicts that. So, how do they find a state of harmony, this raging sea of electrons, to form a superfluid? All that is in the storyline, and we make it as an adventure tale. So, wow. Yeah. So that's some of what we do, and at this moment, we're very excited about developing it to sort of the next level.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I know that in the Brookings Institution article I shared with you, the author, Joseph Keller, mentions that KISS, quantum information science and technology, is often perceived as enigmatic and elusive. I'm going to quote him here. So quantum mechanics strikes the general public as imposing, complex, and difficult to grasp. So how has that perception, maybe changed from the work you've done in theater? What has been the audience's response? What have you kind of learned from that? Did anything surprise you in their response?
And it's, as Gina and Paul said, it's beautiful, this sort of enthusiasm to want to learn more. And, it's now also in the public psyche, right? With, for example, film, you have Ant-Man or Oppenheimer or whatever it is, or some of the TV shows that are coming on right now. And because you mentioned that you're a biomedical engineer and that you also like dance, I can tell you. So first off, it was so heartwarming that our audience ranged from age 4 to, all the way. And it was just wonderful that they were quite captivated. And, so, and that's my colleagues, their artistry too is just so beautiful. But coming to, for example, MRI was one of the first things that you mentioned. And for example, in Quantum Voyages, we depict that through the language of dance, actually, because you mentioned that you're a dancer. I mean, it's this amazing modern medical marvel that truly is of quantum origin. You go into that machine and there's that high magnetic field, but inside you have all these little magnets in just water molecules, right? The protons in H2O. And as Paul was saying, they are doing a superposition. They're pointing this way and that at the same time, which is mind-blowing. But we were able to show all the movement through what the spins are doing. It's called precession. It's like a top, you know. And then when you embody it, you also put a storyline because it's the human life at stake. That, I think, holds a huge draw. And we're just we're taking baby steps, but we can see that there is power to that synergy.
Yeah. And you mentioned wanting to kind of expand on this. And so I'm curious, like, what do you think, obviously doing anything like this requires funding. So like, how would you ask funders to kind of approach funding these kinds of projects and, quantum engagement at scale?
So I think, and I'll say a bit, and I'm sure Gina and Paul will also have things to add. I think one thing is stepping back. It now the next year sort of marks roughly 100 years of quantum physics, and the thing to realize is that people are excited now. They say, "Oh, it's the second quantum revolution." The public is paying attention. The governments are paying attention. They know that they're on the cusp of something new happening. But if it's a second revolution, it means that there must have been a first revolution. And in fact, yes, just as all three of you were saying, if you look at the technologies, lasers, transistors, your cell phone, everything, right, that has a whole history of many, many decades. And so the one thing to realize is that there has been ample funding for quantum science and technology.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with decisions having to be made not just by one person or somewhere sitting somewhere on the top, it's just like every one of us, the public, then it's sort of that should be the draw to say that, look, we really need an informed public, and we are at a position where through education of all sorts and science communication and having, as you said, fun, just drawing the public, we can. So the first thing would be to show that quantum has had a history. More than any time, in some ways now, there is a need to reach out to the public. And so it's not like, oh, we're just asking for funding from the air. There's been a whole history of funding for quantum. Let's channel some of that into this communication and education as well. With our thing, with the arts in particular, that does take, it's one of those things where it does take effort because it's not common, but at the same time, it has the ability to spark the imagination. And
absolutely,
that's where we have to find that sort of sweet spot. But I'm sure Gina and Paul also have quite a bit to say on this.
Yeah. And I think for Gina and Paul, I might ask you to speak on another topic that you've all mentioned, which is kind of coming to the fore here, is how can we kind of advance quantum public literacy at the same time that we're advancing quantum development, quantum computers, and the development that's happening in academia and industry. I think Keller mentions this in his article, and it's a great point. And to what Smitha is saying, like being able to move the literacy forward might also help us with getting that funding support. And I think that's the point Keller makes as well. So coming back to my question, how can we advance quantum literacy at the same time that we advance these products?
Well, I just want to say Paul and I worked together on the Public Quantum Network, and we talked about this, and I think we agree that one great way to involve the public as technology progresses is to involve them in upgrades. And, Paul made the analogy of a computer game where you kind of level up or you have access to something different and new. And so the same thing can happen, but in a real quantum technology sort of way, where now we're saying not only can you, let's say, do a test for entanglement, now you can communicate securely with your friend, now you can send secret messages, now you can try to hack those messages, now you can, and then as we add those things and we have this feedback loop working, we might have new ideas. Say the public might say, well, why don't we do this with that technology? And we can implement that. And so that's really exciting. That's kind of the vision for the public quantum network. And we hope that it's the vision for any technology, that companies embrace that way of doing things, that they make sure to continue to educate and reach out about their technology. And I think that happens naturally as they, as they develop. But I think for quantum aspects, I think it's even more critical. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Paul.
I would agree. I agree with everything Gina said. So maybe I just give a couple other examples. So being able, at the moment, we have networks that are sort of self-contained, we might say. And Gina mentioned there's a few quantum networks around the country, maybe. But you can imagine then technologies that allow you to link together different quantum networks. And we're working on those technologies. Lots of people are. And once you get those, then we would try to build on and add more nodes and be able to link things together. Another example would be quantum memories, where you can store quantum states, and those are going to enable a whole bunch of other capabilities. And as those become available, then you want to, even in their lower stages of operation, sort of insert them as features that the public can start learning more about, and then could start thinking and saying, oh, well, if you could do that, then maybe there's this other application that I'm interested in that requires being able to store my quantum money or something like that. And then that is going to be this sort of feedback, which will then presumably, then you get researchers like us and like our theory friends who then say, we can start thinking about how would you implement that feature that they want based on these applications. And I think that's maybe how you get this sort of a one thing building upon the other.
I love that. I love the feedback loop that you both are mentioning, and being able to incorporate the public in almost crowdsourcing and developing these features, and then using that in making the quantum applications and the technology better. So we could go on. I wish we could, but we are coming close to the end. So my last question for all of you is, I'm curious, and again, we're going to hone in on this concept of working with the public, and who is that really? It's local community leaders, it's science communicators, it's teachers, it's students. And what can all of these local community leaders teach quantum scientists about quantum?
Sure. So I'm going to reinterpret that to say not what they can teach us about quantum, but what can they teach us about quantum engagement, or engaging the public with quantum. Because, of course, we understand very well, or fairly well, the quantum, the rules of the quantum and the technologies and what the limitations are. But what we as scientists don't have nearly as good a connection with is what's the perspective of the people? What do they know? What are the problems? What are they most concerned with? Selling someone a medicine that saves them from flying rhinoceroses is not that helpful if they don't have to deal with flying rhinoceroses. If the thing they really have to deal with is another sort of problem, being able to engage with us and help teach us what are the real concerns, and because you can really only teach, in my opinion, you can only teach people if you can scaffold the thing you're teaching them, connect it to something that people already know, and then you can build from that. So, if people know about 3D movies, then we can talk about 3D movies as a way of encoding quantum information. Or maybe they know about video games, so we can do that. Or maybe they know about dance instead, so you can use that. It's always important to start with what people know and move from that. And that's what I would say the community leaders can be helpful with, or at least one of the things is helping us get the right perspective.
I guess I'm going to, for Gina and Smitha, kind of change that question a little. What problems can be solved by community engagement in quantum? And specifically, have you learned anything from the community as you've been doing this work? And have you learned something that has impacted the way you approach your work in quantum?
Okay, I'm going to tell you that the answer to this, and to the audience, will come in a big way very soon. So personally, I'm just going to say that, for example, working with the arts, and also Gina and I have in-house educators and learners, and in a very positive way, critics, namely children. And if you're able to explain to them, you yourself learn deeper. And so I think it starts right there. Educating our young it's not only essential to them, but even for ourselves as scientists to understand deeper and to really, and even that leads to curiosity, new research and everything. So there's that. For me, the arts, it's a different language. Quantum physics is one where even the language didn't exist when these concepts started coming in the early 1900s. There was, what is the role of the observer? What does, just what does it mean, the superposition? What is duality? And they had to really look to Eastern philosophies to even find these answers. So I think all these different perspectives are extremely important and rich. And the reason that I told you that the answer will come in big ways to you next year is that you're conducting this interview on actually a very special day or special set of days. On Friday, June 7th, the United Nations proclaimed 2025 as the International Year of the Quantum. And it was months in the making. There were, UNESCO had already endorsed it. There have been 60 plus countries towards it. Yeah, and so it's a year-long initiative. It's worldwide. It'll celebrate the contributions of quantum science to, fundamental understanding of nature, technological progress, and really raising global awareness. And just ensuring that all nations really have access to quantum education and opportunities. So I think, of course, you've heard our personal stories here, but I think it's an exciting time to be focusing on this physics or this science and this sort of the whole civic engagement, because next year will be grand and it's something to watch out for.
That's so exciting. That's awesome. Gina, any final thoughts on problems to be solved from community engagement?
Yeah, well, as Paul said, we may not know what problems are solved, and so engaging the public so that we solve problems we would never have thought of is a great goal for any engagement with the public, but especially around quantum. And in terms of things I've learned, I guess it's amazing how quickly the public gets down to the foundational question of what really is entanglement, and that is still an open question. And so who knows, maybe through engagement we can start to approach that question from different perspectives that might hold different insights. So that's also been very exciting as well.
What a beautiful idea. I love that, going to first principles with the public very quickly. And I want to thank you all for your time. And I'm excited for next year to be Year of the Quantum, which means you'll all be back next year for another interview. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
It's been a pleasure.